D5 2.10 has just dropped, and I want to talk about all the big changes in this update. The updates really fit into three different categories. They affect the render engine, and yes, we did get path tracing. That's huge. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. And we're going to talk about features, quality of life updates, and we're going to be talking about asset updates. So let's get straight into it. Path tracing was just added, and path tracing is like one of those things that people have been asking about forever. Basically, we've been using a ray trace engine known as D5 GI, which does a fantastic job like producing realistic results using a ray trace engine. Path tracing takes it to the next level, and it gives us that photorealism that you can kind of expect with like V-Ray or Corona, and it's putting us at that same level. The only downside is it will take a lot more time because it is, calculating a lot more information. So let me show you how to activate that. So if you go over here and you go to Preference, under rendering, you'll see a real-time path tracing toggle. If you toggle that, it's not going to look like anything's changed, but what you will see under display, you're going to get all these new settings. You're going to get this guy that says accumulate, and this is basically starting the process. It's essentially denoising the image. So if you've ever used, V-Ray or Corona, you're probably used to this where it takes a long time to generate a realistic image. So let's talk about these settings. GI precision. Basically, on a scale of 1 to 3, 1 being quick and low quality, 3 being slower and high quality, you can calculate how precise the global illumination should be, right? The next one, reflection depth, same scale, is how many material bounces, and this is going to affect the quality of your reflections. Then we have samples per pixel, and this is where you're going to spend literally your most time rendering an image. The lower the values, the quicker. Still high quality, of course. The higher is going to give you more definition, more realism. It's going to trace the pixel a little bit more, but it's going to add a lot of time. So I want to talk about, a comparison of what 2.9 looked like versus 2.10. So check this out. So here, that same scene, right? 2.9's on the left, 2.10's on the right. So we're talking about 1:30, then goes to 8.5 minutes. So take a second, look at the image, and see if you can see any differences. And if you're struggling, I get it. The changes are really, really subtle. So something that's happened in the engine is like we're getting more bounces. Path tracing is giving us more light bounces, more material bounces, just overall more realism. It's matching like what's going on in the real world. The engine has also been updated to fix some of the foliage and cloth rendering. So that's going to look a little bit more realistic. So watch what happens when I do a little toggle to make it a little bit easier. So I've got 2.10 up top, 2.9 on the bottom. Before, after, before, after. I'm going to toggle this a bunch of times until you start to see what's going on. If you haven't figured it out yet, things begin to look brighter and lighter. That goes back to the bouncing that I was talking about. Like, let's go to this window. Okay, before and after. Look, we're even getting detail over here. It's transforming those shadows from just being like these, like, kind of blurry, like darkish shadows to actually being bright, right? Like that's actually realistic. That's what it should look like. Even in here, in the interior begins to look brighter as well because the light's coming in through this skylight, bouncing around, right? And it's giving us a more accurate representation of the global illumination. Same thing with our tree leaves, right? Pay attention to all the leaves here. Very, very subtle, but they get a little bit brighter. You can see it there. All the surfaces begin to sheen a little bit more, right? So a little bit brighter. Again, the detail here is really, really subtle, especially for the exteriors. For the interiors, you might notice it a little bit more. So let's hop into the interior. Same scenario, 2.9 on the left, 2.10 on the right. We go from 1:19 to 10:53. So almost 11 minutes, right? So take a second, see if you can see any differences, and then we'll go to our overlay. So let's go over to the overlay. I got 2.10 up top. And check this out. I'll toggle it a couple times and we'll start from the top. In 2.9, one of the issues we had was basically the contact shadows or the corners. That got resolved here. We've got a nice consistent shadow here. This is a nice bright hotspot, and then it tapers off like a proper gradient. Here it's kind of like all over the place, right? So let's scroll down a bit and pay attention to here and in here. This is much darker because this is accurate. Like this is a dark kind of crevice. This is the kick area for your foot, so you're not jamming it up against the cabinet. And then in here, this is a little bit brighter, right? Again, those are those light bounces. Even the glass looks a little brighter as well. Pay attention here and there. Metals look better. So it does enhance everything. It does add another level of realism, but at the cost of time. And that's really going to be up to you in terms of if it's worth it or not. The settings I used here, going back to here, they were 3, 3, and 100. Okay. I could, try 200, but that's going to make it take about like 15 minutes. And I'm using a 3080 GPU. So use that as a benchmark. If you have something less than that, it's going to take longer. So something you need to, think about. I think in the world of like architecture, and architects and designers, interior designers, is the extra quality going to be worth it? When you're dealing with like really tough deadlines and just like the rapid pace of things, that's really going to be up to you. But I kind of feel like most designers might just stick to the regular render engine because they just don't have the time, right? One thing I will say about the path tracer is it's either on or off. It's not saved per scene. Okay. So you're either enabling it or you're not. So just be aware of that. If you have that little widget toggled on under preferences, it'll just make everything path traced. Okay. So if you notice renderings are taking longer, that's why. So just be aware of that. I do wish it was like scene based. I'm sure there's some sort of limitation, but anyways, that's what's going on there. So again, that was under preference and rendering. So I'm going to turn it off for a second and let's talk about the next big feature. We have an actual proper night mode. Okay. So watch this. I'm going to swing over here. It might not look like much, but right over here on the UI, we've got an area for custom. We could do custom daytime and custom night. And that custom night is giving us all these new settings. So I can actually toggle how bright the sun is. Before I had to kind of fake this with HDRs. Here I can actually choose like how big the moon can be, the actual phase, right? So I've got like a dynamic night system here, right? The altitude and azimuth, what we're used to with the custom light settings, it just has its own column now. And you can customize how bright the starlight is. So this guy right over here. And I'm going to turn off clouds and just to highlight that a little bit more. So low and high. So it gives you that flexibility for those night scenes. Off, on. Talking about nighttime, we also have a Milky Way parameter. So if I toggle this, and let me just crank this up and look up, you can visualize the Milky Way. I'm not sure when you would use this. If you have a good use case, I'd actually be very curious to know why. So drop that in the comments because I'm not sure. I don't know when I'd ever use that. The nighttime for sure. The Milky Way, I don't know. So that's night mode. The other enhancement we're seeing on the environment side of things is we did get a overhaul of precipitation. Everything's going to look a little bit more realistic, and we get the addition of water mist. So you can kind of see what's going on here. You see that little mist? So we've got that going on. Snow, rain is going to be improved. Totally cool with that. So that's it for the render side of things. Again, path tracing, night mode, improvements to plants, cloth, and rain and snow. So now I'm going to go back to my front view and let's talk about some of the quality of life things that D5 has added. So this is actually a really important one, and it's something many people have asked for in a long time. Generally what happens in the world of 3D is like you import your project and you're kind of floating in the middle of nowhere, but in the real world, you're often surrounded by things. So right over here, under our terrain tool, we actually have a city tool, and this is going to use OpenStreetMap to bring in information. So I can literally go to a city, let me go over to, good old Midtown Manhattan, and I can create a little selection box and I can import, I can even like customize how big the box is. I can import this area and this will be loaded in, and I'm going to have like some dummy models that I can use as context models. And like, look how fast that was. And this is like, this is Bryant Park. So you can see it's like OpenStreetMaps in no time at all. And the cool thing is it's not like just a group, like, and I can't edit anything. No, this is all editable. I can actually toggle buildings on and off, the roads, right? If there's any green land, like parks and stuff, any water, and then any ground maps, right? The cool thing is, let's say your project was right here, and you see how there's a building here? You can actually detach this by just double clicking, and now you can just hide it, and you can put your project there, which is great. So why would you use this? You know, if you have, if you don't have any context models, this is like a great starting point. This is very typical for the world of architecture to have some sort of relationship to your project, because it's not floating in no man's land. So let me turn this off, and it brings a lot of stuff over. So it's nicely grouped. You can just turn off, and just keep in mind, this is, OpenStreetMap. This is not like D5 invented this. This is like an open source project. If you were to do this manually, it takes like so long to actually do, and it like bogs down your file size and everything. So I'm glad they just did it themselves and added that integration, because that's a huge time saver. The other nice little quality of life things, right over here, we have nice little scatter presets. This is all just to save you some steps. So you could literally just like click lawn, and it'll give you the presets right there, and then you can drag them on. It's great. Scatter is amazing, but it saves you some time. And I think that's really the nice part about these updates. They're all quality of life based. Then the next important big update is the AI tools. So post AI. So every time you render an image, for example, right here, you have your post AI features here. And what they've done is they added Inpainting here. So you can actually select areas, and they can swap out content, right? So we've got sky parameters, water, vegetation, and character. So let me just enlarge this. And here I just said, bring in like a twilight sky, and you can see it like change the lighting here and everything. Here I said, give me a proper groundscape, and you can see it just affected that. So that's actually really nice, because the Inpainting has the control to just affect a specific area. So again, how that works is I could click vegetation, and then I can choose where I want it to be. You'll notice that this gets cut off, so that's why you see me going full screen here, but I can choose the area. That's what this guy is. And then what I want spawned. So really, really handy in case I don't want to do it manually in D5, right? Then on that note, also adding that they did add like a motion blur. So if you ever want like moving people, and they've got like the blur and everything, this will add it to them. There's even like a taillight function for moving cars. So that's super cool. So those are some of the big quality of life ones. There's a bunch of other ones, but again, I really want to talk about like the ones that impact us the most. Definitely worth reading like the patch notes. I'll probably do a follow-up video that goes through everything, but I just wanted to talk about the big things today. Then lastly, there are the asset updates. So right under model, what they've done, especially in the character side, they've added over like 300 hotel and resort assets. So we're talking about like people swimming, waiters, business suit characters, robes characters. It just goes on and on. So we're talking about 300 right there. And then we're talking about just like business people for like lobbies and dance halls and everything. So great to see that they're adding all this content here. They're actually listening to the community, because this is actually some of the stuff that we've requested, and some of the other patch notes that they've added also have come from colleagues of mine. So pretty cool to see that they're doing all that. But anyways, that covers the majority of the big ones. There's plenty more features packed into this, but I just wanted to talk about like path tracing in particular, because that's something people have been so interested about and so like hyped about, and like it's really good. And I think this is like the foundation of D5 going to the next level of realism. I think if we can get that time down, it'll definitely be like a more appealing than the ray trace engine that we have now. But I think the reflections look great. Just to bring that up again, just our side by side, they just look so much crisper and brighter, and like that's great. And I think this is a great move in the right direction. Anyways, that's it for now. If you have any questions on this stuff, drop a comment. Happy to answer it. If you liked it, leave a like. And if you made it this far, please think about subscribing to the channel. All right, see you next time.